All right, let's take a look at number 5 here. Number 5 says that given 4, and then it says parentheses, measure of wyx equals 3 parentheses measure of wyz. So that's another way of writing, like, if you take the measure of 4, or take the measure of wyx and multiply by 4, it's equivalent to wyz times 3. All right, so we've got that going on. And the measure of xyz equals 150 degrees. Find the measure of wxy. Okay, so let's kind of take a look here, find these. wyx, so that's this angle right here. Okay, I'm maybe gonna underline it in blue. And then wyz is this angle over here, maybe underline it in orange. The measure of XYZ, the whole thing there is 150, so I'm going to jot that down on the outside. So there's a lot of ways to probably set up and solve it. What I would maybe recommend is incorporating a couple different variables, and we can write a system of equations and then solve them together. So I'm going to maybe call the measure of wyx, let's call that the letter x. I'm going to call that x. And then I'm going to represent this angle with a y. So then I'm going to say, I'm going to rewrite this equation. I'm going to say that 4x equals 3y, okay? Now, I can also write an equation with the total being 150 degrees with the angle addition postulate, because I know that I can add this angle plus this angle together and get 150. So I can also write x plus y equals 150. All right? So there are a number of ways to do this. We could isolate x or y here. We could isolate x or y here and plug in. It doesn't really matter. I think what I'm going to do is maybe I'll work with this equation, and maybe I'll just go ahead and get x all by itself. All right, so if I come through here and I take away y from both sides, I get x equals 150 minus y. So what I could do is I could take this expression, I can do substitution, and I can put 150 minus y in place of x up here, and then I can solve this problem and I will have nothing but y's. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to take this expression and I'm going to substitute it in right there. Hopefully I don't run out of paper, so I might be kind of writing all over the place. Okay, 4 times 150 minus y equals 3y. All right, so multiply that in. 150 times 4 is 600. 600 minus 4y is equal to 3y. So I can just move my y over here. Okay, so I have 600 equals 7y. And then when I divide by 7, okay, I get an unusual decimal. I just divided that out and got this number. So I'm going to leave it. I'm actually going to reduce that down. So 600 sevenths will reduce to, let me start over. 600 over 7 reduces to, oh my goodness. Oh, it stays as 600 over 7. Okay, so you could write it, let me do a couple things. I want to leave it as 600 over 7. It does turn into a mixed number. You might write it as 85 and 5/7, but I'm probably going to stick with this 600 over 7. So it's kind of a messy number. I'm trying to find, before I go any further, the measure of wyx. So I'm actually trying to find the measure of x over here, or this angle I called x. So I'm going to go ahead and take this value of y, and I'm going to plug it into, I can plug it into either equation. I'm going to plug it into this one because this looks a little bit easier to work with. Okay, so I'm going to take this value and I'm going to plug it in. So I'm going to say x plus, I'm going to leave it as 600 over 7. equals 150. So I'm going to subtract that from both sides. So 150 minus 600 sevenths. So I got 64 and 2 sevenths. As a improper, that would be 450 over 7. Okay. So because I decided to call this angle x, and that's what I got for x, this is my solution. Okay, now if this was a Schoology problem, we'd have to enter the improper, but either are equivalent. So it's kind of a difficult solving one, but I want to point out the geometry behind it is we used angle addition postulate here, and then here I went ahead and plugged in, I defined these as x and y, and then it turned into algebra from there. I solved the system. So again, this is one way to solve this. There are other methods, but ultimately that's the answer we're coming up with. Okay, let's go on to the next page. Okay, we are find the value of x if given the following. Diagram may not be drawn to scale. So I'm going to try to label my picture with these. I try to write on my picture if I can. WYZ, negative 4x plus 10. WYX is the other one. It is a negative 2x plus 30. Okay. And then measure of XYZ, the whole thing is x squared. So I usually put that on the outside if it's the whole thing. So I'm not told that this is an angle bisector, so I cannot set these equal to each other. The only thing I can work with is angle addition postulate. The sum of the two interior angles is equal to the total. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that equation. So negative 2x plus 30 plus negative 4x plus 10, I guess I could have written minus there, but I'll fix that in a minute, equals x squared. All right, let's combine. This is going to be a negative 6x plus 40 equals x squared. All right, I am going to have to solve for x, so my options would be factoring, or you could do quadratic formula. All right, so I'm going to almost always go toward factoring. If you want to do quadratic formula, that's fine. You can kind of work quadratic formula. We should get the same answer. So factoring, I need a 0 over here. I want to keep x squared positive. So I'm going to need to add the 6x over and take away the 40 to shift it across the equal sign. So 0 equals x squared plus 6x. And then I'm going to take away 40 from both sides. So that'll turn into a negative 40. So now let's factor. A value is 1. So I know it's got to be x times x. So factors of 40 that add or subtract to 6. So 1 and 40 isn't going to be it. 2 times 20 is a no. 4 times 10. Okay, 4 and 10 are 10 units apart. So I want 6 to be positive. So that means the 10 is going to have to be positive and the 4 is going to be negative. And then when I multiply them, I do get that negative 40. So minus 4 plus 10, and I usually just quickly check. So that is negative 46. Okay, zero product property. Set them equal to 0. So x minus 4 equals 0. X plus 10 equals 0, and then you solve. So plus 4 plus 4. So x is going to be 4. And on this one, minus 10 minus 10, x equals negative 10. Now, this is where we have to check. These algebraically are right, but if I plug in an x and I get a negative angle measure, I'd have to throw it out. So let's start with 4. So if I substituted 4 over here, negative 2 times 4 plus 30, that seems to work there. Negative 4 times 4 plus 10. Ooh, I get a negative 6. So looks like I'm probably going to throw that out. Let's test out the negative 10. Negative 2 times negative 10 plus 30. Positive 50, okay. Negative 4 times negative 10 plus 10. All right, positive 50. Did I get the same thing? I got that one. I did, interesting. Okay, so it looks like that is gonna be our solution. So I'm gonna go like this. I'm just gonna kind of X out my 4. I'm gonna circle negative 10. Now you might be thinking, now wait a minute, I thought we couldn't have negatives. So you can't have negative angle measures, you can't have negative lengths. This variable can be negative. As long as it doesn't produce a negative angle measure, you're okay. So a lot of times the negative answer just gets thrown out, but this is an example where it doesn't. Okay, let's do one more example here. This one is quite a bit less complicated than the ones we just did. Given that the measure of XYZ is 32 degrees, find the measure of XYW. So XYZ is the whole thing. 32 degrees. I want you to notice these marks. That tells me that this is an angle bisector. These angles are equal. So if I need XYW, I need this side. So I simply need to cut 32 in half. Okay, so you're going to take 32 and divide by 2. So 32 divided by 2 is 16. So the measure of angle XYW is 16 degrees. So make sure when you're working problems out, you are, labeling things. Draw yourself a picture if you're not given one, because it really helps you visually see, oh, I just need to add these two together and set it equal to the total. Okay, or when you put the 32 on the outside and you start looking at your symbols, you can see I simply need to divide by 2. Okay, if you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of me.